Hey, beautiful, please consider subscribing to our channel if you've been enjoying these stories. Your support helps a lot. Aid us in reaching our goal of 1,000 subscribers.
If you're watching this from anywhere in the galaxy, drop a comment and let us know your quadrant or country. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Because you won't believe what this human does next. They said humans couldn't be trusted. They called Earth a biological nightmare, a death world so savage that even the most war-hardened species of the Galactic Council gave it a wide berth. So when the human ambassador stepped into the council chambers alone, with no armor, no guards and no translator drone, everyone assumed he was either arrogant, stupid, or both. Ambassador Jack Mercer didn't look like a man burdened by the reputation of his species. If anything, he seemed amused by the scrutiny. His footsteps echoed in the silence of the council hall, the polished obsidian floor reflecting the white light from the planet-sized chandelier above. He walked like someone used to drawing fire, and not flinching. A whisper ran through the delegates. Vibrations of alarm. The Glaxerai clicked their mandibles nervously. The water-tethered Orxians slithered deeper into their gel tanks. Even the telepathic Nkari recoiled mentally from the ripple of calm indifference bleeding off the man. No formal escort. No translator unit. Just him. He stopped at the platform, adjusted his jacket, standard Earth diplomatic weave though clearly tailored, and surveyed the 72 species glaring at him from above. "I was told there'd be a chair," he said dryly. "Guess I'll just stand." No one laughed. A voice boomed from the upper tiers. Cold, mechanical. "You will speak only when addressed, human." Jack didn't even look up. "Sure thing, metal man. Just figured I'd remind you, I'm not the one who requested this meeting. You all wanted a demonstration." A low hum of disapproval buzzed through the chamber. The presiding speaker, a crystalline construct named Virex 7, rose from its pedestal. Its prismatic core pulsed with controlled disdain. "Earth remains under observation. You are not a full council member. You are not trusted." Jack tilted his head. "And yet here I am." Virex's core shimmered. "Yes, here you are. Alone. Which raises a concern. Is your kind reckless or simply ignorant of danger?" "Neither," Jack said, his voice steady. "We just don't flinch from it the way you do." The statement landed like a thunderclap. The air tasted different afterward, more charged, more fragile. A series of lights lit up along the inner perimeter. A square bay in the floor hissed and slowly opened. From it, an enormous containment crate rose from below the platform, hydraulic arms groaning as it locked into place. Thick composite steel bars, sealed magnetic bolts, and hazard runes, every precaution imaginable short of firing it into a star. The lion was already awake. It paced behind the bars, its massive shoulders rolling under golden fur. Each paw step thudded like distant drums. The beast's amber eyes scanned the crowd with complete disregard. Its tail flicked and its breath came in deep, controlled huffs. Alien species that had never set foot on Earth recoiled at the sound. Virex's voice dropped a tone. "What is this creature?" Jack didn't look at the lion. He didn't have to. "This," he said, "is an apex predator. Native to Earth. No natural enemies. Capable of crushing bone with its jaws. Fast enough to outrun most prey. Strong enough to kill most threats. We call it a lion." "Why bring such a beast here?" asked the serpentine delegate, curling its long necks behind its podium. "Because you think humans survive by dominating everything," Jack replied. "You think our planet is a hell's cape, and that we're demons who crawled out of the mud with flamethrowers. But that's not why we're still here." He walked slowly toward the cage. The lion locked eyes with him, its massive head lifting. "We didn't just survive Earth," Jack said, "we learned how to live with it." Gasp. Audible and psychic. One delegate actually activated a personal energy shield. "You cohabitate with that?" one shrieked. "It could rip you apart." Jack smirked. "That's what makes it beautiful." He stepped in front of the cage. "Wait," someone shouted. "Do not open." Too late. The magnetic locks disengaged with a click that echoed like a death sentence. The door creaked open, then swung wide. For a fraction of a second, the entire chamber held its breath. The lion stepped forward. Muscles coiled, fangs glinting, mane thick and wild as a storm. Alien hearts skipped beats. Plasma weapons discreetly powered up. And then, Jack held out his hand. The lion didn't roar. It didn't lunge. It padded forward, brushing its flank against the ambassador like a house cat greeting its owner. The deep rumble that followed was unmistakable, purring. He reached up and scratched behind the massive creature's ear. You've all seen war, Jack said, eyes locked on the delegates. But have you ever seen trust like this? There was no sound for a long time. Even Virex 7's core dimmed in what looked like stunned silence. I don't understand, murmured a representative of the Threx Dominion, her exoskeletal claws twitching. How do you tame such a thing? Jack crouched beside the lion, his hand still resting on its mane. We didn't tame them. We earned their respect. Same as any friend. The Threx delegate blinked all 6 of her eyes. Another voice asked, what if it turns on you? What if it decides you're weak? Jack gave a small, tired smile. Then I die. But here's the thing, it hasn't. The lion yawned, massive fangs stretching skyward, then lay down beside him, head resting on its paws like it was home. One of the Nkari lords whispered across minds, this is not rational. This is biological lunacy. You house monsters in your homes. Jack stood. We don't just house them. We build bonds. Wolves became dogs. Jungle cats became companions. Even horses, prey animals, chose to run with us instead of from us. Virex's voice had lost some of its chill. Your kind is unlike any we have encountered. Jack nodded. That's the point. You want to judge us by our violence. But our real power is our relationships. Our ability to understand the dangerous and make it less so. Not by force. By trust. There were no follow-up questions. The chamber didn't erupt into chaos. It didn't break into applause either. But something deeper happened. Quiet understanding. For the first time, the council didn't look at a human and see a threat. They saw something worse. They saw a species that could stare death in the face and scratch it behind the ears. The presiding speaker rose again. This demonstration, it said slowly, has exceeded expectations. The council will review this session. You will be contacted pending deliberation. Jack gave a small nod, then turned to the lion. It stood, stretched, and followed him obediently toward the lift. At the threshold, he looked over his shoulder. Next time maybe I'll bring the eagle. He's better with crowds. The platform descended in silence. In the chamber above, alien minds reeled with what they just witnessed. Not because a human had tamed a predator, but because it had chosen to love him back. And for many of them that was far more dangerous. The doors sealed behind Jack with a soft hiss, and the echo of his footsteps faded into the depths of the lower platform. But up above, the council chamber remained frozen in a silence so absolute it might have been a vacuum. Dozens of species, some older than stars, sat still in their seats, still trying to process what they had seen. A predator, the kind their own people would have incinerated on sight, had not only obeyed a human without a neural leash or chemical implant, but had trusted him. For creatures like the Virex, this was more than a shock. It was a threat to everything they thought they knew about dominance, survival, and the laws of evolutionary power. And Jack Mercer had done it all with a smirk and an open palm. Deep below the chamber, Jack leaned against the lift rail and scratched the lion's mane. You did good, buddy. Better than me, probably. The lion gave a low rumble, pleased. For all his power, it had the calm demeanor of something that had no need to prove anything. A king doesn't bark. He merely waits for silence. Jack's private shuttle docked smoothly with the lift platform. He guided the lion inside, gave it a reassuring pat, and keyed a sequence into his wrist pad. The wall screen lit up with council footage, already dissected, rebroadcasted, and annotated with a dozen different alien languages. They were watching. All of them. That was the point. He sat down beside the lion, who curled up at his feet, and watched the data scroll for a moment. Then he tapped into the secure channel. Mercer to Terran High Orbit Command. Phase 1 is complete. They're rattled. A voice crackled back, gruff and amused. We saw. Hell, even we're rattled, Jack. You petted a lion in front of the entire council like it was a golden retriever. Jack smiled faintly. He is if you raise him right. There was a pause on the line. Then, you sure they're ready for phase 2? Nope. But they're curious. That's all we need. He shut the feed off and leaned his head back. He wasn't here just to shock them. He was here to show the council something they didn't have a name for yet, something scarier than brute strength, more dangerous than warships. Human empathy. That ridiculous, irrational, lethal affection they had for the world around them. And as if to prove it, the lion's tail thumped once against the deck beside him, warm and relaxed. Back in the council chamber, the deliberations had dissolved into frantic whispering. He touched it with his bare hand. No control implants, no suppressors, not even a leash. It purred. The crystalline Virex pulsed with slow, careful thought. He did not demonstrate control. He demonstrated partnership. There is a difference. An animal of that size could kill him with a twitch, hissed a delegate from the Cthelk swarm worlds. What logic allows for that risk? Virex's prism flickered. Not logic. Something else. They watched the recording again. Frame by frame. Jack's body language. The creature's relaxed posture. The mutual trust evident in every movement. It challenged their very framework of civilization. Not because it was impossible, but because it shouldn't be possible. And yet there it was. And the deeper, unspoken fear loomed in every mind. If this is what humans do with animals, what are they capable of with people? Jack's image flickered across a dozen more screens, now transmitted to foreign military intelligences, research academies, and threat response algorithms. But none of those systems could predict what came next. An emergency summons was issued. Hours later, as Jack returned for the second session, the chamber was different. No longer a court of judgment. Now it felt like a lab, a theater, a testing chamber all at once. The lion had not returned with him. He had left it in the shuttle, peacefully dozing beside an open ration pack. In its place, Jack brought something smaller. A flat, translucent sphere suspended in magnetic orbit. Inside it, a pulsing field of synchronized images, loops of Terran creatures interacting with humans across time and history. He stepped into the center again. This time no one told him to wait. He didn't ask permission either. I figured some of you still don't believe what you saw. Thought I'd make it easier. With a flick of his fingers, the sphere lit up. A video played, grainy at first. A child hugging a massive dog after surviving a building collapse. The animal had dug through debris for hours to find him. Another image, more vivid. A woman riding a tiger in what appeared to be a remote reserve. Not for show. For transportation. The tiger loped through the underbrush calmly, flicking its ears but showing no signs of stress. Then, a scuba diver floating in a reef, gently guiding a great white shark by the snout. No cage. No weapons. Just two creatures existing, aware of one another, neither afraid. Jack looked up. We don't tame monsters, he said. We meet them where they are. We figure out what they need. And we offer it. A dozen translators blinked, struggling with the nuance. One delegate, armored in spiked carapace, rose. This is not power. It is recklessness disguised as kindness. Sooner or later, your creatures will betray you. Jack raised a brow. Maybe. But we don't start with fear. We start with trust. Sometimes it gets us killed. But more often, it gets us something better. The recording shifted. A soldier in a war zone, his K9 partner dragging him out of crossfire. A bear nudging a lost child back toward a campsite. A wild elephant stopping a jeep, then gently removing a thorn from its own foot in front of a stunned human, as if asking for help. Jack spread his hands. We don't rule Earth. We share it. And the scariest thing? It shares back. Silence again. But this time it wasn't fear. It was awe. Because every species there had battled nature. Conquered it. Engineered it out of their way. But none had befriended it. Not like this. Not even close. One of the elder delegates, a being made of flickering plasma waves, leaned forward. You said earlier that your real power is in relationships. That your survival depends on them. Jack nodded. Do you extend this madness to other species? To enemies? Jack didn't answer right away. He shut down the projection sphere and clipped it back to his belt. He looked up at the chamber, not like a man standing trial but like a man offering a dare. We made peace with wolves, he said finally. We turned them into family. He stepped backward. Imagine what we could do with you. That landed hard. The council didn't know whether to be inspired or terrified. Probably both. Jack walked off the dais and this time no one tried to stop him. Back aboard his shuttle, the lion lifted its head as Jack returned. It blinked slowly then yawned. Jack rubbed its forehead and sat down beside it. They're not ready, he murmured almost to himself. But they're starting to wonder. And in this galaxy? That was more dangerous than any declaration of war. The storm didn't arrive all at once. It came in fragments, shifts in posture, hushed tones and languages spoken at subsonic frequencies, visual signals too fast for untrained eyes to catch. But Jack Mercer wasn't untrained. He recognized tension, the prelude to action. He saw it in the council chamber the next morning like a thunderhead forming over still water. There were more delegates this time. Not just primary species but auxiliaries, subcontracted races, proxy observers. Some hadn't attended a full session in decades, maybe centuries. Their presence meant only one thing. Something about Earth had spooked the galaxy enough to bring every calculating eye to one table. Jack stood in the center again alone. No lion. No holograms. No grand gestures. Just a man in worn boots, hands behind his back, waiting for the next round of resistance to throw itself at him. A Threx Dominator rose to speak. Its voice, layered in chemical harmonics and filtered through a translation grid, cut through the chamber like a blade. You claim that your species forms bonds with predators. That you befriend what you fear. That you understand what others conquer. But this is not survival. This is insanity romanticized. Jack tilted his head, patient. We survived because of that insanity. The Threx clicked its mandibles. Prove it. Jack didn't move. You want numbers? Casualties? I could show you extinction lists and species recovery timelines, but it wouldn't mean anything to you. You'd see statistics. I see names. Another delegate chimed in, this one an archivist from the vast consortium. You are not the first species to share environments with predators. But you are the first to integrate them socially. That is, unprecedented. Unprecedented, Jack echoed, is just a polite word for terrifying. He walked to the projection dais, activated a recording, and let the council see Earth's history in motion. The first image appeared, a human child asleep in a wolf den, curled against pups. Grainy, ancient footage taken during a remote expedition. The wolves showed no aggression. Only proximity. Protection. The second was clearer. A soldier standing beside a massive black bear, both gazing down a mountain slope littered with burning wreckage. The bear had blood on its coat, but not the soldier's. A third. A man sitting beside a wild elephant, their shadows stretching over a Sunset Street savanna. The animal leaned into him like an old friend. Jack let the recordings loop, then deactivated the feed. You think we tamed Earth, he said. We didn't. We adapted to it. Learned to live with the things that scared us. Not because we were brave. Because we were desperate. Because we couldn't outrun the world we were born into. So we learned its language. There was something raw in his voice now. No arrogance. No performance. Just memory. They burned villages to kill the wolves. Shot panthers from trees. Declared war on things they didn't understand. And they lost. Over and over. Until some idiot somewhere thought, what if I bring food instead of fire? He paced slowly, not for show but to think. That's where it started. With scraps left near dens. With time. With patience. And when the wolves didn't bite, when the cats didn't run, we changed. Both of us. It wasn't dominance. It was negotiation. Several delegates looked visibly uncomfortable. One, a sphere of hovering neural threads, adjusted its shape like it were curling away from the concept itself. You risked your children, one of them said. You risked your species. We built our species on risk, Jack replied. He stopped walking. The first man to throw a saddle on a horse didn't know if it would kill him. The first to train a hawk had to bleed for it. The first to dive with sharks had to learn calmness deeper than fear. But every time we connected, we learned something about ourselves. He held up his hand, showed them the faint scar beneath his thumb. That one. The feral dog years ago. Saved a girl from drowning. Bit me by mistake in the panic. I kept him. Named him after my father. He died old under the stars with my hand on his head. None of the delegates spoke. So Jack did. You're afraid of what we are. That we walk side by side with death and call it friend. That we love things that could kill us. But let me ask you something. He leaned forward, looking directly at the Threx Dominator. What happens when we do that with you? The chamber dropped into absolute stillness. The Threx did not answer. Because it didn't know how. That question wasn't theoretical. It was practical. Dangerous. It carried implications of cooperation, of trust, of seeing alien civilizations not as threats to be measured or partners to be leveraged, but as living things capable of being understood. And for the first time in millennia, the Threx Dominator didn't feel dominant. Virex 7's crystalline core pulsed slowly, taking everything in. You make bold claims, human, it said. You equate biological madness with cultural strength. You risk extinction for relationships. Jack nodded. That's the deal. And what has it cost you? He didn't hesitate. Too much. But not more than it gave us in return. He could feel their uncertainty now, not born of doubt but possibility. That was always the scarier thing. Doubt you could dismiss. Possibility demanded choice. Virex flickered again. Some among us question your species' emotional volatility. That your alliances are based on sentiment more than reason. Yeah, Jack said. We're not calculators. We're people. That's the point. We don't bond because it's smart. We bond because it's right. Because it's who we are. He gestured to the darkened dais. You all pride yourselves on conquering nature. But Earth taught us something better. Not how to conquer danger, but how to share the world with it. Another silence. Longer this time. Then a delegate from the mineral-hewn world of Urxis, shaped like a walking obsidian shard, stood. My people have hunted our planet's predators to extinction. We saw them as threats. Nothing more. Jack looked up at him. And did that make you feel safe? No, the Urxian said. It made us empty. The chamber stirred. Something intangible shifted. It wasn't approval yet. Not trust. But something vital had begun to fray. The certainty they had brought into the room now felt cracked around the edges. Jack stepped back toward the lift. No dramatic exit. No final speech. As he reached the platform he turned. We don't think we're better than you, he said softly. We just see things differently. Maybe that's enough. The lift began to descend, pulling him into shadow. And above, the delegates watched the darkness close around the human who had walked into their fortress of fear and made them question not his strength, but their understanding of what strength even was. They had not yet voted. But something irreversible had already taken place. They were beginning to want to understand. And for Jack Mercer that was the first real victory. Jack didn't return to his quarters after the council session. Instead, he walked the long, curved corridors of the council compound, deep in thought. A dozen observation drones hovered at a polite distance, pretending to do maintenance work, but their cameras never left him. His footsteps echoed through the polished stone tunnels, surprisingly archaic for such an advanced civilization. He didn't mind being watched. In fact, he wanted it. Let them study him. Let them try to calculate the angle of his stride or the temperature of his blood. They wouldn't find what they were looking for. The truth was never in the data. It was always in the feeling. He paused at an archway that opened into one of the arboretums, artificial ecosystems maintained for visiting delegates to feel at home. This one mimicked something like a humid swamp, though he wasn't sure from which planet. Misted ferns glistened under artificial starlight. And there, standing at the edge of the platform, was one of the council's analysts. The being was bipedal, loosely humanoid, its skin smooth and violet, its eyes huge and reflective like polished stone. No mouth. No nose. Just the glimmer of bioluminescent markings on its skin, shifting with emotion and pulses. It turned when it heard him approach, blinking slowly. Jack nodded. Didn't mean to interrupt. The analyst held its gaze on him for a moment longer, then gestured, an open-palmed motion meaning stay in its culture. They stood in silence for a while, watching mist rise through silver leaves. Eventually the analyst spoke, not in words but in thought. A soft, carefully composed projection directly into Jack's consciousness. You are not what they expected. Jack didn't look away. Neither was your vote. The analyst's skin pulsed with faint amusement. You touched danger with tenderness. And you asked it to touch back without claws. Jack smiled faintly. Is that your report title? No. That is just what I saw. There was another pause. Do you know what your lion looks like to us? Jack turned now, studying the analyst. A weapon. At first. But then, a mirror. It reflected something none of us were ready to admit we had forgotten. Jack furrowed his brow. Which is? Wonder. Curiosity. The urge to approach the impossible with an open hand, not a closed fist. Jack looked back into the mist. We didn't set out to impress anyone. We just stopped running from the dark. The analyst's markings slowed. And that may be your species' most dangerous trait of all. Jack glanced at it, amused. Not our weapons, not our chaos? No. Your willingness to walk beside what could kill you, and love it anyway. They stood together for several more minutes, saying nothing. Eventually the analyst turned to go. But before it did, it paused again. They will vote in your favor. But do not mistake a vote for understanding. You've opened a door, Mercer. But some of what walks through may not be human. Jack nodded slowly. Neither was the lion. But it walked beside me anyway. The analyst said nothing more. It vanished into the corridor, its luminous trail fading like mist in morning light. Jack stayed behind, looking out into the artificial forest, lost in thought. And for the first time since arriving, he didn't feel alone. Back aboard his ship, the lion stirred as Jack entered. It blinked at him lazily, yawned and rolled to its side. He knelt beside it, ran a hand through its mane and whispered under his breath, I think they're starting to get it. The lion gave a deep, low rumble. Not quite agreement. Not quite protest. Just presence. Jack looked out the viewport again, not toward Earth this time but toward the stars beyond it. Not everything out there was friendly. But maybe now something out there would see Earth and humans, not as a threat, but as something worth walking beside. And that thought alone? That was enough to carry into the final vote. Jack stood by the viewport watching the lion sleep. Its massive ribcage rose and fell with steady ease, its head tucked between its paws, its breathing slow. There was peace in it. Not just in the animal, but in the moment itself. The kind of calm that only ever came before something irreversible. He'd been through battles. Actual firefights. Trade collapses. Political ambushes worse than any minefield. But none of that felt as heavy as this moment. The council would vote within the hour. Not just on Earth's diplomatic status, but on whether humanity could be trusted with the knowledge, resources, and influence of the greater galaxy. Jack knew what they thought. Humans were dangerous, unpredictable, emotionally driven, and fearless in ways that defied biology. To the council, those traits weren't strengths. They were loose threads in an otherwise tightly woven structure. He rubbed his temple and turned away from the glass. The lion stirred slightly, letting out a breath through its nostrils, but didn't wake. They trusted each other. That was the difference. The line that no species in the chamber above had ever dared cross. And now, everything depended on whether they could learn. When the summons came, Jack was already halfway to the lift. The chamber this time was brighter, sharper. As if the lights themselves had been dialed to clarity. The delegates were seated, but their postures no longer suggested suspicion. Now they were simply watching. Waiting. As though he were less an intruder and more a variable they couldn't stop thinking about. Jack stood alone in the center again. Same place. Same man. But the atmosphere had shifted. He could feel it in the silence, not heavy with judgment now but thick with expectation. Virex 7's voice cut through the air, measured and cool. We have reviewed the sessions. We have debated your conduct. And we have seen your demonstrations. Jack didn't respond. He knew better than to interrupt this part. The crystalline structure pulsed once. The final vote for Earth's Provisional Alliance status passed with a 62% majority. A quiet gasp moved through the room. They had done it. Jack exhaled slowly. The nod he gave was small. Grateful. But not surprised. Virex continued. There are conditions. A review in one cycle. Limited access to sensitive species. Observation rights remain with Council authority. Jack shrugged lightly. We're used to probation. Laughter. Real this time. A low ripple of it from a few scattered species who hadn't laughed in centuries. But before Jack could step down, a delegate rose from the second tier. It was the Threx Dominator. Tall, exoskeletal, gleaming with a sheen of deep emerald and jagged plating, it looked like a creature forged in fire and bred for extermination. Its very presence made surrounding species shrink in subtle defense. The Threx were feared. Feared even by those who didn't fear much else. It raised a claw slowly. I request the floor. Virex did not deny it. The Threx stared down at Jack. Not with contempt this time, but with something far stranger. Respect. My kind, it began, voice layered with chitinous distortion, have long ruled through dominance. We control through fear. Our hatchlings are trained to kill before they speak. We do not understand what you are. Jack held the gaze steady. The Threx shifted its head slightly. But we saw what you did. With the beast. With the council. With us. You treated fear not as a weapon, but as an invitation. It descended from its platform, step by heavy step, until it stood just meters from Jack. Close enough that most species would have run. But Jack didn't flinch. The Threx raised a display pad. There is a creature on our homeworld. The Cherak. Ancient enemy. Untamable. Every attempt to train it ends in blood. We have hunted them nearly to extinction. Jack said nothing, but his eyes narrowed. Curious. The Threx extended the pad. We wish to learn your method. To observe your kind with such beast. To understand this coexistence. Jack took the pad, looked it over. The image that flickered to life was terrifying. 9 feet tall, plated in bone-like armor, claws like machetes, teeth in spirals. Not a predator, an extinction event with a spine. But there was something else in its eyes. Confusion. Pain. Not rage. Not hate. Just survival. Jack looked back at the Threx. You want my help? The Dominator nodded. A subtle motion. But seismic in implication. We do. Jack gave a slow, calculating smile. Then let me tell you how this starts, he said. You don't approach it with dominance. You don't try to prove you're stronger. You give it something it needs. Water. space. And then you wait. The Threx hesitated. And then? Then you don't run when it looks at you. The Threx stood very still. You are unlike us, it said finally. Jack pocketed the pad. Everyone is until they're not. He turned to leave, but Virex's voice halted him again. Ambassador Mercer. He paused. The prism gleamed brighter. There will be consequences. Species that fear what they don't understand. Reactions you cannot control. The way ahead may be more dangerous than what came before. Jack turned back. You've just described the history of our entire planet. He stepped onto the lift. And we're still here. The platform lowered, drawing him into the depths again. Above, the chamber remained locked in its own transformation. Not just of thought but of identity. Because in the span of 3 days, they had seen something no threat index could quantify. A man had walked into their fortress of law with a monster, and neither had needed a leash. Back aboard his ship, Jack found the lion awake. Its golden eyes watched him quietly as if it already knew the answer. Jack lowered himself beside it, leaned against its warm fur and let out a long, slow breath. They're going to try, he said softly. The Threx. Of all species. The lion closed its eyes and let out a low, deep huff of breath. Something between a laugh and a sigh. Jack nodded. Yeah, he murmured. That was my reaction too. He looked out the viewport again, and this time Earth wasn't in view. Just the stars. Endless. Silent. Waiting. But they weren't so silent now. Because somewhere out there, for the first time, the galaxy was starting to listen. And humanity had just found its voice. Ready to teach. Ready to be feared not for its weapons, but for its understanding. Ready to reach into the darkness and offer its hand, not to control, but to pet the monster in the shadows. And maybe, just maybe, to find that the monster wanted to be seen. Jack smiled into the stars. Let's see what else they're afraid of. Then he scratched the lion behind the ear, and it purred loud enough to wake the galaxy.